The move online was meant to make marketing more effective, more targeted, and more accountable. In reality, the opposite has happened. Digital marketing has lost its way, and both advertisers and consumers have lost faith with digital marketing. It's our responsibility to fix it. This is why Bango has brought together some of the best minds in marketing to discuss not just what's gone wrong, but how we build better campaigns, become more effective, and develop more ethical practices for the digital marketing industry. To find out more about how Bango is championing a new approach that better serves marketers and consumers, download the manifesto at bango.com/manifesto. Enjoy the event. Well, I'd like to add a welcome from Bango. We're hosting this event. I think we're really interested to see how this afternoon's conversation goes. And so thank you very much, first of all, to everybody for joining us today on a typical London winter's day. So welcome, Bob, to London in winter. I'm joined from Bango, some important Bango colleagues. First of all, Ray Anderson. Ray and I started Bango 22 years ago. Ray's now executive chair at Bango. I'll tell you more about the interesting things he does over drinks later. And also Suki Miller is Vice President of Marketing for a product called Bango Audiences, which is really our productization of a lot of our thinking about how to make digital marketing work better for customers and for companies who spend money on digital marketing. So I mentioned Bango started 22 years ago. Interestingly enough, when Ray and I started it, arguably the first thing we came up with was an ad tech idea, which was, although we're known today, I think, mostly for providing global payments to quite big companies. Google uses us for payments, Amazon, Microsoft, Netflix, and a large number of other online merchants who reach their customers principally through mobile devices. Arguably, we started with an ad tech idea. When we first wrote the plan for Bango, we adopted the Japanese word for number, which is bango. And the reason for that was it reflected our first innovation, which was to enable somebody with a mobile phone, which had a web browser in it, you may remember WAP browsers 20 years ago, to very simply type a number sequence into their browser in order to get to a piece of content or service or buy a ticket online. So that was much easier to do. It's much easier to do it, to enter a number than a URL. And you could promote it, of course, a number in any kind of advertising format. You could promote it on a billboard. We had estate agents who put them on the bottom of for sale signs outside houses. It could be your phone number to get some personal content, a personal page. So essentially what we were doing is we were using these Bango numbers to link the world of advertising with the world of the internet on the phone. So I'm linking offline and online together, which 22 years ago was quite a new thing, 22 years ago, as I said. Our first customers in around 2000, 2001, however, were still licking their wounds from the collapse of the dot-com bubble. And so although they were very interested in our number system for linking their advertising with their mobile websites, they needed a way to collect money. So they needed a way to monetize the web traffic that would come to mobile devices. And of course, all of us at the time, you may remember, declared post-dot-com bubble that we were no longer going to drink the Kool-Aid of internet reach without revenue. That was the idea. However, digital advertising grew and grew and grew. The power and mythology almost of digital advertising, digital marketing grew and grew. And so now, I suppose between then and now, who knows how many trillions of advertising and marketing dollars have been spent on digital marketing based on the holy grail of greater engagement with more customers, but without necessarily that, how do I make money out of this component? I don't think we're any the wiser 22 years later than we were when we first came up with this idea. During that time, a couple of interesting events happened that I think opened our eyes to the potential of linking the payment information in that world, so the payments world, with the ad tech world, and got us really to where we are now, to link those two worlds together. The first one of those, Ray will remember, we went to King Street in San Francisco about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe longer than that, where a company called King.com, unsurprisingly, was based. And we tried to talk to them about how they could use our payment system to directly collect money without having to go through app stores and various other intermediaries. Within 10 minutes, the conversation had, curiously enough, switched to Canada. And the reason it switched to Canada was that they commented anecdotally that about 4 or 5 months earlier, they'd suddenly noticed a surge in revenue, in-app payments within their games from Canada, of all places. And we sort of looked at each other and we thought, hang on a minute, we activated payment in the Google Play Store exactly 4 months ago. So what had happened was there's been this correlation between them suddenly noticing this surge of paying customers and quickly redirecting their advertising to the Canadian market for reasons they didn't quite understand. Because in the background, we'd unlocked payments, so people were able to download their games and start making in-app purchases. So as we left the meeting, they basically said to us, can you please tell us which countries you're opening payments up in next? Because then we'll target all our advertising into those countries. So advertising leading to paying customers. Now, for that story, of course, there's a flip side story. And that relates to Pokemon Go. You do probably remember Pokemon Go being launched to a great global hurrah in, I think, 2016, 2017. Bandai Namco, the big Japanese games organization, had the rights to license the product in Latin America, and they were focused on Brazil. And I discovered on a trip to Brazil that they were licking their wounds over a major problem. They had decided to run a campaign to drive more downloads of the Pokemon Go game. And spent, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, maybe even more money on their digital advertising campaign. And it had led to no change in revenue whatsoever. And because the one piece of information that they'd failed to understand was that at that particular time, there was no way for a Brazilian consumer to be able to pay from their phone. There was no operator billing or telco billing enabled. So this was a sultry, a lesson in, salutary lesson, I should say, in making sure you understood the close relationship between people's capacity for paying and where you spent your advertising money. So to badly paraphrase Hamlet, digital marketing doth make fools of us all. I, like many people, had hoped that with the mobile web and with digital advertising, there would be qualitatively better relationships between businesses and their customers. It wouldn't just be quantity, it would be a qualitatively better relationship. But I think that was probably a naive thought in hindsight. What we have today is digital marketing spreading its wings pervasively. And I think in some cases, and I'm looking forward to this being challenged, almost a kind of religious belief in the importance of digital marketing in the marketing mix. And it consumes more time, we know, for marketers, and certainly it's consuming more advertising dollars, but is somehow no more effective, I would argue. We as Bango spend time thinking about this because we have come up with an approach and a way of thinking about digital advertising that actually will, we think, reduce advertising noise. It is this idea of purchase behavior targeting, so this idea of linking payments with how you target your advertising. So what people choose to spend their money on, we argue, is the strongest indicator of someone's propensity to buy a product or service. So if you strip away the vague and quite honestly, vaguely intrusive practice of demographic and sociographic profiling, and just say you're not really interested in what somebody's like, you're interested in how they behave, then purchase behavior targeting is a robust proof point.
In economics, they call it revealed preference as distinct from stated preference.
There we go. Thank you. Yes. So that's something I've learned already.
Yeah.
So by focusing on what people want to buy, it allows marketers to actually run fewer but better targeted advertising. So yes, less advertising, potentially. It also takes us, I think, away from the placid acceptance that a lot of online advertising is wasted. Is it? Well, we've done a couple of things at Bango in the last couple of years in conjunction with our colleagues at Wildfire. The first thing we did was we did a survey about 18 months ago of CEOs, and we asked them just open-ended questions about their opinions on digital marketing. Perhaps unsurprisingly to people in this room, over 60% of them said they frankly thought it was probably a waste of money. And about half of them said that they would quite happily cut back on digital advertising spend without a second thought if they were looking at saving money. So that was really asking questions about social media advertising in particular. So we then refocused on search advertising. And this time we ran our own experiment by running some ads. You can probably guess what search environment we ran them on, but it could have been any search system. So we ran some ads, and we picked out a particular targeted audience of people ready to buy. And the people that sold us the advertising said, absolutely, we've got all the data that proves these people are ready to buy the product you're offering. It turned out that over a third, 35% of the ads never reached the targeted audience. In other words, they reached people that had no resemblance whatsoever, under any characteristic, with the targeted profile that we bought, that we spent our money on. 26% of the adverts that did reach the targeted people had no interest in buying that product or service whatsoever. They just weren't buyers, they didn't have buying capacity. So we then ran some maths and we said, okay, if there's this amount of money spent every year on search advertising, what does our miss rate equate to? And it equates to about 60 billion a year of search ads that just don't get to the right people. So it's wasted money. It's just burned money. So the industry as a whole is spending that kind of money on ads that from the outset are going to be ineffective. You know in advance they're going to be entirely ineffective. So if these are the problems, then how as an industry do we instigate change? Well, change, I think, normally comes out of a small group of people who come up with some big ideas. So this is how we start today in this room. A manifesto, if you like. So to get us going, I'm going to finish off with 5 or 6 thoughts, which we can chew over, and it's not obviously exclusively these 5 or 6 thoughts. So thought number 1, as advertisers, don't take what we don't need. There's a lot of data harvesting that goes on, and sometimes I think we get to the point where we harvest data for its own sake. We become fixated with data, and yet most of it isn't useful for what we want to accomplish. Second point I touched on earlier on is about stereotyping, sociographic and demographic. So segmenting is a really good idea. Stereotyping is a terrible idea. So segment, but don't stereotype. Focus on what people do, not what you think they're like. Third one, the interesting one, is don't be a creep. What does that mean? Well, we know pretty well, and we've been told any number of times, that consumers don't particularly like being constantly monitored. As advertisers, consumers who are online are not part of our surveillance network. So we need to be really thoughtful about how we monitor and how we track people. Run fewer, better ads. I touched on this earlier on. Take a much more targeted approach to advertising. It is inexpensive. It is easy to go live with digital advertising, but that doesn't improve quality, targeting, or success, clearly. Fifth idea, don't let metrics lie for you. One of the reasons that 60% of CEOs don't trust digital advertising is because the way it's reported to them by their marketing colleagues doesn't equate in any meaningful way to the KPIs that people run their businesses against. So engagement stats don't mean anything to people in the C-suite. Finally, it's our responsibility as an industry to fix it, and that's where we want to help out today. Today, as Russell said, isn't just about problems, it's also about solutions, different ways of behaving, different forms of conduct. So I'll finish there. I'm obviously fascinated to hear everybody else's comments. And I think there is clear opportunity for us to improve the way we go about digital marketing for the benefit of businesses and consumers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.